All right, Peter, here we are again on a whole new set. Who would have thought that our budget, our
It,
location changed
it's quick,
by that
isn't it?
much?
Yeah, pretty successful, I guess.
We just made so much money off the last one we had to change the whole decor
Exactly.
or something. In fact, we dare I say it, if our budget has increased so much, maybe the camera focused on me will work this
Maybe a
time.
little better.
Maybe. Maybe it'll just come out to begin with.
That's that, hopefully.
But yeah, we're here to discuss another movie as we'll be doing. But first, if you wouldn't mind, Peter, do you mind if I share with you and those
Mhm.
listening a little anecdote of something that happened in my life
Of course.
relating to this channel, specifically how I, because it's a budget show. Let's not try to hide anything here.
Mhm.
So we may or may not uh, film some of this stuff with our phones.
Yeah.
Um, and there's stuff uh, weird. There's weird stuff
hmm
that happens when you try to transfer from a phone video that you take to a computer. So I just want to go over my silly little process.
Okay.
If you'll
Very
if you'll
eager to hear it. Yeah.
oblige. So I have my notes here because it's kind of a long, weird thing.
The
Um,
step-by-step process of
yeah.
getting something from your iPhone to
To
a
my
microphone.
specifically Windows PC.
Yeah.
I thought it would be simple. It was only 5.56 gigabytes in
Nice.
total
Okay.
on the phone. And so I began with what I thought would be the simplest step, which was just USB port.
Sure.
So I just take my phone,
Right.
plug it directly into my computer.
Yeah.
And
Seems
there's
simple.
there's like two main methods of that. There's just File Explorer.
hmm
It's like, your USB. Oh, it
Of
recognizes your
course.
iPhone, and then you could go in there and there's like a camera roll thing. And then you could just open up your photos. But for some reason, the video we took wasn't in there. It was the only thing that
Hmm.
was not in there. And so that was method one. The other method for USB is going into the Photos Windows app
Okay.
on your computer
Right.
and then being like import, like from whatever device.
hmm
And then from there in that app, you could load all of them. And for some reason in that,
It wasn't there
it
either.
didn't load there either.
Hmm.
So that didn't work.
The ghost video.
And then in on the iPhone, if you like hold down a video or something, it'll
hmm
like zoom out slightly, and there's like more things you could do with it. Um, Two of these things was share to Google Drive, and the other one was send to Gmail or something.
Yes.
And I tried both of these, and it loaded like the entire video. It took like 40 minutes
Oh, it takes a
for
long
each of
time
them,
to upload something to Google
and
Drive or Gmail. Yeah.
and by the time it finished, neither of them worked. It just gave some like generic error of
Yeah,
like
sure.
video is too big or
Too big
something.
to be
And
compressed or
that's
whatever.
what I was realizing here. For some reason, the phones, specifically maybe just the iPhones, they're really not big fans of videos that are more than I feel like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
They're just kind of a pain in the ass about it
Yeah.
for some reason. So after looking this up, I find out there's this Files app thing. It's
Okay.
it's got like shitty reviews on the App Store, so
Oh,
but
so
it's
you had to
but
get
it's
out
but
of
it's
that.
like Apple affiliated,
Sure.
I think. So I installed that, which I thought I already had it.
hmm
So either I install it or reinstall it. And then so the idea here is that I take stuff from my camera roll, put it into files, and then from files I get it to my computer somehow.
Okay.
And there
Okay.
are numerous ways of doing that.
Yes.
So for one, there's when it's in the files, you could then upload it to iCloud,
hmm
which I thought, oh, that's reasonable. I could just, even though it's a
Yeah.
Windows
But you
PC,
can
I could
still
just log
access
into
it.
iCloud and then I could download my shit there if I upload it from my phone. I think that's a reasonable thing to happen. But then I forget that my phone is connected to my like family's iCloud rather than like my personal one.
Okay.
And like I could go and bother my parents about like, hey, give me the password, which I've done before. Like that's not a problem. But I don't know, for some reason I just didn't feel like doing that. So I was like, oh wait a minute, but I do have an Apple thing assigned to my own Apple ID. That being this old shitty thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, this guy. And so I try to send uh, it to my
To the
iPad.
iPad
The
now.
only way to do that is over email was one option, which obviously that didn't work the way I was doing it.
hmm
But then I just think, oh, I could just iMessage it over because I've sent videos on my like phone to my iPad or
hmm
vice versa. So I think I could do it again. This time, no. It I think like loads the entire video again, and it
And
doesn't
it's
work.
like, no.
I even tried like copying the video on my phone and like splitting it in half,
Mm-hmm.
but it like um it specifically was like it's too big, and it gave me the option to like cut it down,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
was like 5 minutes long, like the version that would be cut down to send, so I'd have to like send it like
A lot.
that many
Yeah.
times
Oh,
and then
Lord.
re-put it back together again.
20 different videos.
So I said forget that. But also from the Files app, you have the option to I think also do the same thing of Google Drive or Gmail.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried both of those again, and they didn't work either.
Again.
Um,
Cool.
but I
Okay.
finally figured out a method. It's just called the Google Drive app, and you just open that, and then you just add it from in there. There's like an option to do that, yeah. And it took a little bit also, but it worked.
At least it didn't cancel out and be like, oh, sorry for spending 40 minutes. I guess it still doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do that, and I finally am able to go into my computer and download it from there. Except that for iPhones at least, their videos they don't save as MP4s; they save as Apple's own thing
Right.
dot MOV or move.
Yep.
I don't know if it's called that. And that doesn't really work with a lot of video editing softwares, which is the thing I want to be messing with for these things. I don't just want to get my iPhone footage and put it on the YouTubes immediately. I
Right.
got to mess with it first.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, oh well, what do I have to do to get this thing into there? And apparently, this program I already had installed, VLC, media fucking
I'm a big
shitter.
fan. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan.
it's nice. I use it to listen to like downloaded music I have
Yep.
that's like not on Spotify.
Audiobooks.
Yeah.
I watch my movies.
You could do
through it.
anything
Yeah.
on it.
It's a very
It's great,
potent
except
tool.
it for the most part, like watching stuff, doing all that stuff is good.
Yes.
It's extra tools that it provided for me did not
That is
necessarily
something I did
work
not mess around
as
with.
intended,
So, I
because
can
they
imagine.
have an option within there to convert
Mhm.
media files, so they could do like a .mov to an MP4.
Sure.
And so I do that, and it takes the entire runtime of the video, so like an hour and a half
Yeah.
of me doing this, and it stops, and I get it to end, and I open it, or I try to open it in the video editing software, and it gives me that same issue. So then I just try opening the video just to watch it, and it plays the video visually, but there's no audio.
Oh.
Because apparently there's like this thing called a codec that I guess videos have, and it basically just defines things as like, I don't know, it just like splits apart like what is made up of it.
Tracks, yeah.
So like stream 0 of the codec typically is the video,
Mhm.
and stream 1 is the audio.
Okay.
And for some reason VLC flipped it.
Okay.
I don't know why they did that. I don't know how it works, but for some reason it messed up. And then I just ended up downloading this thing called Handbrake, and that did it fine
Okay.
for me. So that's it. It was a long process of it's the first time we're doing this.
Content creation on a budget, it is a struggle, but I mean, we're gonna get better.
And it's a learning process.
For our own good.
It took us like an hour today to set up the fucking
Yeah.
cameras,
Oh.
but now I know how to get this
Hopefully.
son of a bitch working.
Hopefully.
Maybe we'll see by next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I know of that process. You just take the movie, open the Google Drive app, put it in there, download, handbrake it up, and we're good. I don't have to go through all this other
Exactly.
random shit.
Yeah.
So
Now we're learning constantly, evolving constantly, which is all we can ask for.
at this point, yeah,
Hmm.
every video gets better and better. Definitely.
Exactly. And speaking of moving forward and possibly progression, what did we watch this week?
Oh man, we watched quite the wokeness awakening movie of the decade. Did it come out this year or last year?
Yes.
So another modern, new to be modern classic here. I saw the TV Glow.
Directed by Jane Schoenberg,
Mm-hmm.
or Schonenbrunn.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Just came out recently, and first impressions, what do you think?
I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really liked it.
I agree.
And it's an A24 movie.
Yes.
and
very
it-
much
and
so,
it
very much.
Definitely feels like one, and I mean that in a good way. Maybe someday I'll mean that in a bad way, but for now I
Right.
enjoy it because it's as an A24 movie, it's very weird.
Yes.
it's
they get to
experimental.
be a little more experimental with their films,
Hmm.
for better for worse.
Yeah.
I would say A24 has, for now, a good track record of having like pretty good avant-garde films that are not really mainstream. However, they've been getting more and more popular, and obviously they are successful enough to be able to
Hmm.
attract bigger names and more experimental directors who are just trying to get like a really good kind of um, personal like experience to most audiences, which is it's nice to have at least one uh, film studio that is willing to
Yeah,
take
definitely.
risks.
That's how I sort of feel as of right now about A24 also. They're sort of, in theory, helping the little guys,
Right. Yeah.
making movies or giving the, production budget and shit out to
Yeah.
people who otherwise wouldn't get it from other people. And they're able to sort of creatively deliver whatever like sort of story they want to be telling.
Yes.
And I definitely feel like in this movie that shines through a lot because this one seems to be very personal
Yes.
and very directly tied to the author director's life because they did both
Indeed.
in this one.
Are you familiar with any of their other work?
No, are you?
I did. I
Okay.
watched We Are All Going to the World's Fair
Okay.
earlier this year, which is kind of why I recommended this, because it is a very strange film.
Which
Similar
one?
to this one.
The other one?
Yeah, for their previous film. Um, it's even more, I would say, avant-garde than this, but it's much more lo-fi. So it's like all of the like creepy pasta elements of like this film
Right.
story are like even more like exemplary at in We Are All Going to the World's Fair.
They're amped up. It's like
Yeah,
weirder.
exactly. But also less like quieter and lower budget. But it was enough to get me interested in this director
Hmm.
to kind of I'm very interested to see whatever they make in the future, especially after this one.
Hmm.
Um, so what do we talk about?
I don't know where to start. I remember you as you were introducing this film to me or like describing it. You said that people had described it as Lynchian,
Yes.
which I understand the
Yes,
comparison,
exactly.
but it's like for David Lynch, like Mulholland Drive, for example. I have no idea what the fuck that movie's about. It's
Yeah,
one of my
you don't
favorites of
have
all
to.
time.
Yes.
I don't know what it's about. Like Hollywood is weird or something, I
At the
guess.
end of the day, that's what it boils down
And
to.
and like
Maybe.
and like this is weird and like experimental and out there too. And like not everything is like super literal all the
Yeah.
time. So I understand why like people sort of
Yeah.
categorize it alongside his stuff. But at least in this one, I have like some sort of semblance
It's
of
a
what
little
it's
more.
supposed to be
Yeah.
about.
It's a little more
Um,
straightforward,
mhm.
and like the symbolism and the metaphors and like the just like the general direction of the film is a lot easier to follow than say
Mhm.
like the surrealism or the abstraction that
Right.
David Lynch is known for. Um, but I can certainly see where the comparisons come from, and I would say that Jane is obviously inspired by Lynch and other directors of this kind of like dreamy filmmaking,
Yeah.
very almost out of body the way that they direct this movie, um, which I think works very well to uh, kind of expand upon the themes
Hmm.
that it's trying to tackle.
Yeah, because there's sort of two major themes, at least to me when I saw this, and it was like transsexuality
Yeah,
and
queerness in
and
general,
TV.
and yeah, TV and nostalgia, and all of these are kind of interwoven and kind of tangling up in between each other
Hmm.
into a very kind of chaotic movie. But I feel like it started kind of slow. I wasn't sure where we were going.
Hmm.
I would say for the first half, like I was definitely like it's very vibey
Right.
in the beginning. I was there for it, and I was like intrigued because it's very much a, like a picture of suburbia and like what goes on underneath it. Obviously, very similar to what Lynch loves to do, but it seems much more um, in the queer aspect
Right.
of living in suburbia, and I don't see many movies like this, which is nice to see,
No, yeah, same.
especially one that is obviously so like personal and um, applicable to many different people. I can see why this movie has been getting so much buzz around it.
Hmm.
Obviously, not super mainstream.
Right. And like if I try to think of like other trans like people in Hollywood, the only like major names that come to mind are like the Wachowski sisters, and
Chelsea's,
they just like at this point they're just making like Hollywood like
yeah,
big fucking random shit that
whatever they
there's
want.
like no like connectivity behind it, that
Mhm.
like people sort of try to like read into like their most recent Matrix or like
Right.
someone before that for like the like
How they
trans
were
like related
experienced,
things, and it's
right?
like
Yeah.
but in this it's like much more like the forefront of it, and
Hmm.
it's like sort of a stronger like emotional and like just like a stronger like connection between the theme and the author, I feel like.
Yes, I've been. I think this movie was first kind of pitched to me as like I was seeing it like branded as horror, which I would say there are elements of horror,
It
but
sort
it's
of is,
not
but
like
yeah.
horror as you expect. It's more of like an
Yeah.
existential dread. Um, but the way I kind of thought of like the horror in this movie is like essentially a depiction of what gender dysphoria feels like, which
Hmm.
I am not as a as a white man, I am not familiar with any of
Yeah.
it. But it does like you obviously feel it, like especially
Right.
in the latter half when everything goes to shit and it's very strange. It is something super incredibly dreadful
Hmm.
and just it is terrifying to
Yeah.
some extent.
And that's what I was sort of thinking too, because I was sort of surprised. Like I was expecting going into this like, oh, if it's about him becoming trans, then he would follow through like that, like the author, like
Yeah,
the director,
yeah.
and it would be about like how like much his life improved,
Hmm.
or how much I guess their life improved like as the transition took place, and then like after that.
Right.
But instead,
It's not.
it's sort of it takes a different direction where it's like if you don't transition,
It's
then
much
here's
sadder than that.
all this bad shit
Yeah,
happens,
we'll
which
have chapped lips. It's like, it's like no.
you'll work at a fucking arcade or
Yeah,
something.
but yeah, Owen, the main character,
Oh
the
yeah,
protagonist, um, obviously their queer identity seems to be transsexual. And even in the beginning,
if it had to be
when they
anything, I
have like
guess.
the gymnasium and like that bubble, all those like the purple, blue, and white,
There's a lot
it's
of like
very
there's a lot
very
of like pink and
trendy. Yeah,
blue
yeah.
imagery.
I do love the imagery in this film. Like the color is like it's a little on the nose. Like obviously
Sure,
pink everywhere.
it's not trying to hide it.
No,
Yeah.
but I think it adds a lot to the kind of atmosphere of the movie.
Hmm.
Um,
It changes what's
yes,
it fucking aspect ratio
yes,
for like
yeah,
the when it's like trying to be more stylized,
yeah.
like
I feel
the
like the
VHS
television,
things.
yeah, the pink opaque
Yeah. I
episodes
feel like we
are like,
got like Wes Anderson, I think, for like,
mhm.
because I've seen a lot more movies like nowadays do that where they flip aspect ratios for various things, especially if
Yeah,
they're like, showing older footage in
yeah.
like a slightly different way or
It's a
like.
very easy to pick up
Hmm.
like distinction between oh
Hmm.
this is reality or this isn't, or even time like periods of
Hmm.
time can be distinguished between using different aspect ratios, which is very nice because it's something that most audiences will at least notice.
Hmm.
However, they don't obviously have to like just like have like a clear picture on like why this is happening.
Hmm.
Um, Another big thing in this movie was the soundtrack. I know
I
you're
was
not
gonna
as
ask you
big.
about it because
Yeah.
I think like almost all of them are like made for this movie,
Yeah.
but I wanted to know if you like recognize any of the
Yes.
artists.
So, with Jane's other film,
Mm.
We Are All Going to the World's Fair, she worked with Alex G again, who did the soundtrack for this movie. He is a pretty big, well, not big. He's an underground artist,
He's
but
big in the
he's big in the
underground scene.
underground. Yeah, very big in like the indie kind of slacker rock genre. And he, I think, did a great job with this soundtrack. But even with this new movie, Jane was able to get much more
Yeah.
buzz around the soundtrack, and I was finding singles popping up from artists that I really love, like Caroline Polachek had a great song, Yule, Flores, and in the film when they were in the bar.
I was gonna ask if that was like one of the
Yeah,
real singers who like wrote
Phoebe
that.
Bridgers showed up.
Okay.
She was the one with like the blonde hair.
Was on the
And
ground
Sloppy
and then
Jane was
stood up.
yeah. It's a they both did the song there, which I was not expecting at all. There are some big names attached to this
That's cool.
film, but all of them are pretty directly like related to like the queerness or the LGBT.
Okay.
Like they are all very like they're allies. Obviously not, but they are related to that, and I think feed into the whole direction
Sure.
of the movie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I can see why they were all eager to kind of contribute to the soundtrack. Um, I think, in general, I appreciated the movie for the soundtrack. However, I do think it was maybe a little blunt, and like some of the needle drops were a little. I don't know. They took me out of the movie at some points.
The specific artists, or just like the
Not
you know
even
the
the
lyrics
artists,
themselves,
but
or like
how much of like it was interesting. It was like almost like different sections of the movie were essentially like music videos, or just like kind of very much focused on the music, which
okay.
I'm not mad about. But I'm not sure how well I thought it fit in with the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that is just my opinion.
Yes, I didn't get that at all. I felt like it all like, uh, it felt pretty seamless. I wasn't like distracted by like any of the songs because I was only just like listening to them for like the first time,
Right.
like in that movie, anyways. So I was fine with all
That's
of
good to
it.
hear. Because I'm a fan of all of them, so
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was able to fit into the movie so well.
Do any of the songs specifically like relate to this? Because I wrote down that specifically there was
Yeah.
the lyric where it was like fucking okay, I didn't write it down, but it's the lyric is like I was born blue
Hmm.
or something, which is like born a man, and then I guess it's like a lady singing
Yeah,
it.
a lot of the songs are like obviously written with lyrics that are kind of related to the movie
I would
and the
assume
film and
so.
the themes, especially the one with Sloppy Jane and Phoebe Bridgers, like basically
It was
the
that
title
one.
track, where they even say "I saw the TV glow." It's
Mm.
like very much
Yeah.
the kind of the thematic core of the movie and the soundtrack, in my opinion.
But yeah, a couple of things I noticed was specifically with people in the cast. So there was this person, Amber Benson, who played the mother of Johnny Link, who was the dude he like faked sleeping
yeah,
over
briefly.
at. So like he knocked on the door and like told her
Yes.
that he was lying about
Yeah.
the whole thing, and she's just like, "What the fuck?" Apparently, this person played Tara on Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Okay.
which was like that. We've heard about it. I don't know if you've watched
I have
it.
not watched it.
I haven't either. It's like it's from the '90s. It's something
Yes.
that like people like 15 years older than us
Yeah.
have probably all known about.
Very much a product of like this
Yeah.
kind of 80s, 90s, like
Mhm.
analog VHS era.
But specifically, I feel like because her name in that is Tara, and like there's the two girls in the pink opaque, which is like the
Oh.
allegory thing
Yeah.
for his shit. So there's Isabel, and then there's
I
Tara.
think it's definitely influenced from like Buffy
Yeah.
and other.
I mean, it has to
shows
be
like
if
that.
it's the same character
Yeah.
name
Exactly.
and the same like actors between these things.
Yeah.
Because yeah, there's that, and like there was this other person, Emma Portner, who was the dance choreographer lady. She played Amanda, who was the friend of the
Right.
gay girl.
Mhm.
And then she played her, and then she also played Mr. Melancholy, who's like the evil moon dude
Mhm.
in like the video, like in the pink opaque show, but also
Right.
maybe sort of in reality. And then also Marco, who's one of the moon dudes. And like those moon dudes, both of them are played by women, even though they have very, masculine traits.
Features, yeah.
And then I don't know, she also played Evil Clown, which showed up for like 3 seconds.
Very briefly.
But like I thought that was kind of weird how they made the same actress lady play all four of these roles, and it was like that's taking place within a movie that's already having like sort of reality warping things, and it's like what's real, what's not real, and they're like talking about how like the show is like sort of becoming real for them, and it's like this real girl who existed in her life, and then they have like a falling out
Hmm.
or something, and then like the same girl, like the same actress behind that role is also playing like sort of the antagonists in like this fictional show
Yeah,
within this movie. It's like I
a
feel like
lot
that
of
adds
layers.
something. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like layered up.
I think there's a lot of celebration of like the 80s, 90s, and nostalgia for that time.
Hmm.
Like just like the analog world. Um,
Yeah,
I love all the. It seems like a pretty still like a pretty low budget film, which is
it didn't
probably
have to
why.
be super mega budget. Like all the effects, I liked when like the moon dude
Exactly.
was
I
like up in
love
her
that.
face
That
and
was
it was
such a
like
great.
fading in and out
Yeah,
and shit.
I really like that whole kind of scene of when like the last episode essentially of season 5.
Hmm.
It's a very cool kind of moment. Um, Even when like Owen, how he reacts to it, and he just like sticks his head in the. I was a little off put by
Yeah.
that whole situation.
Because it's interesting because like mostly in like movies that I've seen, it's like if there's like themes of like television, it's usually like
Yeah,
anti-television, like network or
yeah,
something. And like which is different from like movies within movies. Like if movies are the theme, then usually it's like supposed to be like a celebration of
yes,
them.
yeah.
Because like
Cinema.
because yeah, it's like because I don't know, the Oscars like that or
Yes,
something, and
yeah.
like every person in like the movie industry, I think like
Looks down on
secretly looks down
TV.
on like
Yeah,
TV because it's
yeah,
like lower budget production or something, and then the TV people look down on us
yeah.
because we're recording on
Or
phones or something
pleased.
maybe.
Yeah. It feeds into kind of the choice that Owen essentially makes, where uh, Maddie gives them a choice to follow her outside of this reality, the Midnight Realm.
Hmm.
But eventually they reject that, um, which I think feeds into the dangerous element of television and how it's much easier for Owen to just kind of exist, uh, kind of wasting away,
Hmm.
just essentially feeding off of the television, um, for what seems to be their detriment.
Interesting.
Essentially, when they reject Maddie's offer, it seems like the only really forward progress they make is getting rid of the old television and getting a new LG widescreen TV or
Like
whatever.
when he gets
Yeah,
older or something,
yeah,
which there's a bunch
exactly.
of time skips and
Because
stuff
it's
also.
nothing else changes about them. They stay in the same house, they stay at the same job,
Right.
and do the same thing
More or
watching
less.
television,
Yeah.
which is a sad way to end the movie. But I think it feeds into this the horror element and like the
Right.
existential dread that the movie is very
Yeah.
definitely kind of.
Because I have like a bunch of things to say about that.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I never got the sense that it was like anti-television all of a
No, no, no,
sudden.
no.
Okay.
I think obviously the director loves television and loves these kind of
Okay.
period
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pieces, which is
Right.
crazy to say. Only,
If it's like
it's
more
like
than 20 years
yeah,
old, it's old as shit.
I guess it's 40 years old or 30 years
Yeah.
old now. Just
Mhm.
insane. But I think it is definitely a celebration of it. However, it's a way to depict the trauma that
Okay.
Owen
Yeah.
is going through.
So I was getting the feeling that it was like,
It's almost a coping
the
mechanism.
right. Because I was feeling it was like the author, director, grew up a boy. And they sort of watched these shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something, and something about like the female protagonists or characters in there
Hmm.
sort of resonated with them more than like the male equivalents in like other shows and stuff. And someone like those had maybe like a positive influence on them to help them in their sort of transition. And I think that was sort of the thing
Yeah, for the
that
most
was
part.
happening to the main character here, especially because his dad, after like hearing
Hmm.
the show, is like, isn't that for girls
Yeah,
or someone?
I do like how much subtext there is with
Yeah.
that relationship.
When
It is very quiet
he
and
looks like an
relaxed.
alien when he's like putting him in the shower or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah. Hell yeah.
which was weird.
Yeah.
But what else did you say? You said something about him not changing at all, and I definitely got
Just
that
kind of wasting
feeling.
away in the
And
midnight.
not only just like his situation not changing, but he doesn't change either. And
Yeah.
this is how I think like you could sort of like even if you're not in the queer sphere,
yeah,
or are trans, or are considering about being trans in general, I think there are still like messages you could take away
oh
from
yeah,
this.
yeah,
That being that still like doing nothing, and like being like inactive, and like not being proactive or
yeah,
even reactive at all, and just like letting stuff happen to you, and not like going out of your way to like forge your life for yourself.
hmm
That's a bad thing, and I've seen that theme like dealt with in other movies, but like obviously in this it's more
you get a new
specific to
lens. Yeah,
this, uh, more modern issue,
hmm
uh, and more modern, lens. But like I think that's also still something you could take away from this as well.
oh yeah,
That same sort of core message, especially since like, because yeah, he doesn't change because he's like he when he's like in like sixth grade or whatever,
hmm
he's like when he's getting driven home, he like lays down and like the
yeah,
car seats, and then the
yeah.
time skip happens, and he's still doing this.
So
He's like acting like a child still,
yeah,
and he's expecting to be like not treated like one because he's like still has a bedtime,
hmm
but he's still like behaving in that way, and it doesn't really seem like he grows like out of that at all. There's no really sense of that. He's like almost sort of like what's her name, Maddie, is like almost like pulling his nail
attempting
out,
to, yeah,
and then he just gets hammered in
yeah.
somehow
It's
later,
it's a
and I
very
feel like that's sort of the main
strange
thing.
relationship between
Hmm.
Owen and Maddie, where it seems like they find some sort of solace in each other, especially for Owen. Like it seems like she's the only kind
Hmm.
of anchor he has to what he's trying to like battle with
Hmm.
inside himself. However, when she gives him the out, he like immediately runs away and essentially rats her out, um, which I was not expecting. It definitely
Yeah,
threw me for a loop, but I think it adds to the
yeah,
movie.
it surprised me, but I like that
Yeah,
about that,
yeah,
and it's yeah.
because it's not a happy story. It's not a happy movie, but I think it's important
You can
to
still take away
yeah,
like happy emotions from it as long
exactly.
as you
It's spelled out
are
pretty
considering it in the right
obviously.
way.
Like there was that
Right.
one shot where there's the chalk, and it's just like uh, it's not too late, or like you can still change. I can't remember exactly what it said,
Oh, did it actually
but
just say that?
yeah,
Okay.
it was like a kind of mirror of the shot at the beginning where it
Uh-huh.
pans up and you see the ice cream truck, um,
Right.
but essentially that is like the moral spelled out. Like that's the theme. It's not too late to enact change
Hmm.
and try and uh, move on, try and fight for
Hmm.
like a better future, or
Hmm.
just like improving upon yourself.
Yeah, and obviously the author director probably meant this for a specific set of people who are now going through the things that they once
Oh
did.
yeah,
But it could also, I think, be applied to people
yeah,
outside that
which I
group
think
also.
is a smart way
Yeah.
of not writing yourself into a corner.
Hmm.
Like these are themes that are universal. It's not just for the LGBT community. However, I think obviously there is a good focus on the queer experience in suburbia and kind of how it's very rarely depicted in film, and this is a really like solid kind of auteur's depiction
Hmm.
on this like uh, this whole battle, which I really liked.
Yeah, so did I. And like I don't know, the what's his name, Justice Smith, his like nasally
Mhm.
voice, the
Yeah,
weird thing he had to
yeah.
going the whole time. That was fun.
I haven't seen him in like much else besides
The D&D
the D and
thing.
D movie, but
I've seen him in at least one or two other things. Ooh. But yeah, before we were so rudely interrupted by the camera dying, I was saying that Justice Smith is his silly little voice he's got going.
yeah, he it's not a super like well-known actor. I've only seen him in the Dungeons and Dragons
Hmm.
movies,
Right.
but I think he did great in this film. And so did Bridget Lundy Payne,
Yeah.
who is the other lead actress. Um, they did very well.
Hmm.
That one scene that they had in like the planetarium.
That was really
Yeah,
interesting. That was a really cool, like weird and creative
yeah,
like thing
yeah. That's
that I don't necessarily know what to fully make of, like why a
oh,
planetarium, why the star
like the
sign, like
constellation.
yeah, why
Yeah,
I don't know. It was cool though.
yeah. I'm sure there's that somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. The comments can figure it out
Exactly.
because we'll get plenty of viewers who will be rapidly thinking alongside us in this discussion.
Um, but I think direction was very solid. I think it was maybe a little slow at points. I think that it's purposely or purposefully slow. But I'm not sure if it grabbed me as much as I would have liked. But I think the actors all did a great job. Soundtrack, I had my statements on, or I enjoyed it. I'm not sure how well it fit into the movie as a whole, but I thought it was very solid.
Yeah, pretty much the same, except the music I was, I guess, more acceptable of. Um, but yeah, I felt like a good, like strong, a decently strong emotional connection to this thing, even though obviously the person creating this is a fair bit different from me or the situation I'm living in. I was still able to resonate with this movie and overall enjoy it. There were a few couple of small things though before we get to the very important numbers we have for this, and that specifically with like the Maddie or whatever is like she's becoming Tara, which is interesting because that's like the girl that she was like sort of physically attracted
like,
to.
oh, she's
And so
badass
like
and
yeah,
she's
and
super
she
cool.
she has like long hair at the start, and then when she comes back after like
She's
figuring out all this
yeah,
shit, she has like her hair cut
yeah.
to like I guess match her a little bit. And then sometimes we see Owen was his name. Sometimes we see him like in like a dress thing,
Yeah,
and but we never like fully see him like head to toe in that.
yeah,
Like we see like a blurry like mirror
yeah.
shot, but we never like fully like see him in focus, and that just like hammers in
I think
what
there's
we were talking about earlier, where it's like he doesn't like fully commit to that like transition, like he almost sort of experiences it, but it like he doesn't like follow through on that. And it was almost sort of like an outfit that Isabel was wearing at one point,
it
but like
is. It is. Yeah.
you
I
know,
think there's a lot of scenes like that. Even at the beginning, where there are scenes of Owen walking, and then like
it would transition to
it would
her. Yeah,
transition
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
like a shot of
It's
her
during that
walking
where she's
at the
wearing
same
this
time.
sort of
Yeah,
outfit.
exactly. And that is uh, when he's shown wearing a dress. It's during the moment where Maddie is like confronting him and kind of being like, is your like how your memories are like bleeding into the pink opaque, and there are
Hmm.
like aspects of the television show
Yeah. Oh
that are
yeah.
bleeding into the real world. And so it's like, is that scene where Owen is wearing a dress the same as when Isabel is wearing a
Right.
dress?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
If they are obviously
And if you're like projecting yourself
years
onto the
apart.
character and like
Yeah,
your memories are getting like sort of messed up, and which I also sort of liked about that because it definitely felt like this like weird like sort of fandom thing like before like the internet
oh yeah,
is what it is
yeah.
now, and like how people would like
They
sort of
have
obsess
some
over
have
this
the
show and they
book.
like had it
Yeah,
memorized.
the
Yeah,
full television guide
exactly.
book.
If that also that aspect felt very personal,
Oh yeah.
as well, and specifically like, uh, if I can remember, I forget. I'll put it in the video or
I think
something.
like almost like Doctor Who guidebooks, or like there's a bunch of video game books that would be
Hmm.
like, oh, here are all the secret elements. Very much like a 90s, early 2000s kind of thing. Unfortunately, everything is online now, so we don't really get those physical copies. Um,
Hmm. It's all in streaming, like in this
it's
movie.
all on the cloud. Yeah, it's all on the television. I also really loved the like the actual television and like the pink opaque and just like the kind of it seems almost like campy and like weird, kind of like not super well shot, but
Hmm.
yeah,
And
very
not like
much
well acted
no.
necessarily, like it like sort of cheap, but
Mhm.
like just like in a fun way.
Yeah, it feeds into the 90s nostalgia. Um, and I did like all of the effects of like the kind of television grain
Hmm.
bleeding into reality in really interesting ways. Um, I thought again that that final episode with some of the coolest effects,
Yeah,
but
that
also
was
like
interesting.
the most kind of it was like the most heightened element of horror, but it also fed into like the overall themes in a really nice way.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. And the thing earlier I forgot about was that like, um, if I could remember it again, uh, this is why I need to write all that shit down. But like, he like we remember things differently as we age, and like nostalgia plays like a very
yeah.
big deal
Oh
into
yeah.
these things. So he's like he eventually goes back to the
To
show,
watch it.
and it's like super shitty. And like now
Completely.
when he remembered it, because he played up so much of it,
Mhm.
I guess in his mind or something.
I think
And that's
that.
like a pretty fairly real thing that happens. Obviously, it's a little bit more like
Mhm.
mystically enhanced in this
Yeah, I think
movie.
it also because it feeds
Um,
into how when he rejects and like decides to kind of hide and
mhm.
like um reject his like queer self and
Yeah,
just like be
where
a
she's
normal
sort of
person.
accepted
Yeah,
herself and is trying to like
it,
lead him into
yeah,
that by like accepting that she is Tara or
yeah.
something.
It's essentially kind of cutting off that aspect of his connection to the pink opaque, and
Hmm.
it just turns it into something completely banal and like boring
Hmm.
and like not anywhere near as like scary or like there's no life to the show anymore. Um, as there is very little life in him
Hmm.
as Owen as he continues along, and um, those final scenes in the Chuck E. Cheese or Burger King
Yeah,
place
whatever that place
is
is. That
pretty.
scene was kind of funny.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
it,
for me, it was funny. It wasn't like, you know, it was funny because it was so like weird and
yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah. That's your coping
Yeah,
to laugh at
exactly.
if it
That's
is.
why it's funny to me.
It's
He's
not,
just yelling.
it's a pretty unsettling scene.
Yeah, and then he cuts himself open, and there's
Yeah,
like, I mean, what did you think that the
I'm
deal with
fine
that
with that.
was?
Yeah, the whole ending
Because like the
is
ending is
very.
like very negative, but I think he was sort of like happy about it. I
It's
don't know if it was nervous laughter, or if it was like laughter, or
I
if
think
it like started as
intentionally.
one and became the other.
I think it's intentionally vague and like abstract. I think you could read into it
Yeah.
as
Like the
many
show is
ways.
still like a part of him,
Yeah,
sort of, or like the what I sort of thought it was like he was cutting himself open to see if like the shit would like, because like you know if you'll feel trapped if you uh, regret not making a certain decision. So I felt like that show, which is, I guess by this point is an allegory for his resistance to uh, change,
hmm
or I guess in this case to transition. It's sort of just stuck inside of him, and he's trying to sort of unleash it,
yeah,
and it doesn't really. So he just has to sort of accept that,
yeah. But
which kind of
also
sucks.
like no one like all of the people around him when he's
That
going through
yeah,
his mental breakdown,
they don't
like
care,
they
they
don't
don't
react. They're
notice,
just like dead,
and
like
they
almost
don't
like
understand,
mannequins.
which also you know plays into the transing of like how do people who aren't
Yeah,
that how do they not understand it,
yeah.
you
There's no
know.
visibility for them,
Hmm.
and people try and ignore that. Um, and like even when he's apologizing at the very end, it's like no one's reacting.
Yeah,
That was like, what, is this really where they're gonna end the
yeah,
movie?
that's I
And
guess that would be my complaint is that it doesn't really feel like a great like
yeah,
ending. I mean I you know I'm fine with that being the last scene, but like specifically how it just cut to black there, if
I'm not
it
sure
felt
what
like I don't know, it wasn't fully thought out or
I'm
something.
not
That would
sure
be like
what
my
I'm
one major
supposed to get out of
complaint.
it. Like I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be left thinking of. It kind of leaves you aimless and like afloat, which sure it ties into the
That's
themes
maybe
of
the
the
point.
movie
Yeah,
maybe. But I think there could have been a more like concrete way to land
some
the
maybe. Yeah,
ending. But overall, I think it was evocative, and
totally.
the whole ending scene was very effective in getting you to kind of feel that dread that is like existing around him, that like miasma of death and
Hmm.
decay and like wasting away without having any sort of kind of validation or fulfillment in your life, which is terrifying,
Hmm.
especially because it seems like he's only like 40 years old at that point, where
Oh
it's
yeah,
like 20 years
I
later,
guess that
8
other
years
complaint would
later.
be that his aging. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm like used to seeing a couple movies that, recently that have had like you know very good aging makeup
Mhm.
where they very clearly look the characters very clearly look younger and then
Yeah.
way older, or something like
Yeah.
Oppenheimer has like really good aging
There was
makeup.
that 2 year time skip with Owen, and he comes back
He like
as
his
Justice
puberty just
Smith.
like
I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
he was supposed to be a freshman in high school.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, Justice Smith does look like a 25-year-old who would play high schoolers
Oh yeah,
in this type of thing. Like
yeah.
he could look
I
young, I
mean,
get it, but like not like yeah, 2 years there is stretching it a
yeah.
little bit between like some dude who is a literal child and then this dude.
But there's a budget. They can't have three
Yeah,
different actors for the same
yeah,
character.
and then by the time he's like 40 or 50, doesn't really look it, but it's
I think it
I'm
fits
like
better.
I'm fine with that
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
honestly.
I really liked the element of the grave and being buried alive.
Mm,
I think that was like a clever kind of metaphor for having to fight to free yourself, essentially. When Maddie was explaining how she was like to pay the random person to bury me alive, and then
yeah.
I can't just die here. I have to get out. And eventually she fought her way through and to
Mm-hmm.
the camp.
And it's that experience that made her who she is what you're saying?
I think so. I think it's what that is what Owen is afraid of is obviously
going through that
going
change
through
and like having people like try to accept him or reject him and like all that like all that stuff. Okay.
Depicted as a fight, like to come to terms with your queerness. Maddie had to do it, and in order to become Tara, she had to be buried alive and then struggle and essentially claw her way to freedom.
That makes sense.
And escape the Midnight Realm. Whereas Owen is too timid and is more willing to just try and stay in the now and hide and or however badly it ends for him.
He lets his wife drive while he just sits in the back seat laying over.
Yeah.
Probably. Which we never see his family, which I'm totally fine with.
I think it's very much intentional where they don't even exist. Not to him, like practically to anyone. It's just something that keeps him trapped. The
only thing on his mind is regret for not doing anything.
It's like all he does is watch the television.
And it's just shitty.
Yeah.
No. We can't wait again. All right. We may or may not have been interrupted again. If we forget anything, we'll just show it up on screen right now. But anyways, I feel like we've said for the most part what we've wanted to say, and I have gone back and forth between forgetting things and then remembering the things I want to say, and I think I've said most of the things that I care about.
Yeah.
So numbers, Peter.
Final numbers.
Where do they line up?
I'm torn on this movie. I do like it a lot. I think I at this moment in time I'm giving it a 7, closer to an 8 than a 6. And on rewatch I could see myself enjoying it more. I think the more I think about this movie, I find more to engage with and kind of grapple with, and there's so many different ways to interpret the movie. I think it's quite solid. Yeah,
that's a good take, and one that I pretty much agree with wholeheartedly. It's a 7 for me, a pretty solid 7. Yeah, for me it's a 7, a pretty solid 7. And yeah, I feel like it'll stay there for the rest of the time. I could foresee it being there.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued by whatever Jane has coming our way. I hope she finds more success and that they can just find even bigger budgets for whatever they want to film. I would love if we get more directors that are kind of delving into this side of filmmaking, because at this point in time I feel like Lynch is pretty untouchable in that kind of surrealist
weird shit, but he's gonna die in like 3 years. So she'll take his place maybe.
Exactly. And I hope there's more to come. I hope more directors kind of see this and become incredibly inspired. I hope they can find ways to tell their own stories in such interesting ways.
And I hope that the people watching have the same feelings that you have towards Jane, whatever her last name is, and that they look forward to our next really good videos. That will the budget increase? I don't know.
Who knows?
We'll see.
I guess.
Did we say to subscribe at the end of the last video? Is that a thing we should say, or should we just hope and expect the people to do that?
They know.
I mean, they could think our listeners can think for themselves, and they don't have to hear us like subscribe, do it now, do it, because they could make their own decisions. Like the character in this film, he regretted being not proactive
and staying in one place.
He made if he had made the decision for himself, he would have been so much happier. She would have been so much happier. But will the viewer feel the same way looking at that subscribe button? Will they do it? That's up to them. Will they regret that decision for the rest of their life, or will they commit to it and be ever grateful for subscribing to us two?
Only time will tell.
You heard it here. End that shit.